They were ready to reject her. But the moment her fingers touched the piano, everything changed. The room felt heavy the moment she walked in. No one said a word, but the air itself seemed to pause, waiting to see what would happen next. She stood near the back, hands clasped so tightly her fingers ached. The stage was far away, glowing under bright lights. The piano sat in the center, black and silent, watching everyone. Chairs were filling up fast. Soft voices mixed together, rising and falling like waves. She stayed perfectly still. People around her whispered. Some laughed. Some checked their phones. Some looked at the stage with excitement. When their eyes met hers, they moved away quickly, as if they'd already made up their minds about her. She felt it, that quiet judgment. She adjusted her simple, plain clothes, the kind that never stand out. Her old shoes were polished, a detail she knew no one would ever notice. Her heart was beating way too fast. For a brief second, she wondered why she had even come. The hall was large, but it felt suffocating. The lights were too bright, revealing every slight shake of her hands. She took a slow breath, but it didn't help. Her chest still felt tight. A voice echoed through the hall, calling the next performer. Not her. Not yet. She swallowed and listened as someone else walked to the stage. Polite applause followed. The piano sang under confident hands. People nodded. Some smiled. When it ended, the clapping was polite, controlled, expected. Her own hands wouldn't move. She looked at the piano again. From where she stood, it looked bigger than before. Darker, like it held secrets inside, remembering every person who had ever touched its keys. Her mind drifted to the first time she'd seen a piano, in a quiet room years ago, dust floating in the air. She had been afraid to touch it then too, afraid the sound would betray her, but she touched it anyway. The memory vanished as quickly as it came. This was not the time. Another name was called. Another performer went up. Another short applause filled the hall. Her palms were wet now. She wiped them slowly on her clothes, hoping no one saw. Her own breathing sounded loud in her ears. A few rows ahead, someone leaned toward a friend and whispered something. The friend smiled. Then they both glanced back at her, just for a second. That was enough. Her stomach twisted. She knew that look. It wasn't cruel, but it wasn't kind either. It was the look of doubt. She looked down at the floor, the carpet patterns blurring slightly. She blinked hard, forcing herself to stay present. She had imagined this moment so many times. In her thoughts, she was calm, strong, ready. Reality felt so different. The voice came again, louder this time. It was her turn. For a heartbeat, she didn't move. Her legs felt distant, like they belonged to someone else. The hall seemed to stretch. Sounds grew dull. Then she stepped forward. Each step felt heavy, like walking through water. The sound of her shoes echoed more than it should have. She could feel eyes on her now. She reached the stage. The lights were warm but unforgiving. They showed everything, the small shake in her hands, the way she paused before sitting, the slight rise and fall of her shoulders as she tried to breathe. She sat at the piano bench. It creaked softly. That sound felt louder than applause. She placed her hands in her lap and stared at the keys. Smooth, clean, perfectly lined up, black and white, simple, honest. Nothing like the chaos in her chest. Behind her, the hall was quiet. A waiting silence, the kind that expects something ordinary, something forgettable. She felt it again, that sense that they had already decided. She wondered what they saw. Someone unsure. Someone small. Someone who didn't belong here. She straightened her back slightly. Her throat felt dry. Her fingers hovered above the keys. They, Isuk. She pulled them back. A small breath escaped her lips. She closed her eyes for half a second, long enough to remember why she was here. Not for them. For herself. She opened her eyes. Her hands moved back to the piano. Slower this time, more careful. Her fingers rested lightly on the keys. Time stretched thin. Someone shifted in their seat. A quiet cough came from far away. She couldn't look up. her mind filled with noise, old voices, old doubts, moments when she was told to stop, to choose something safer. She tried to ignore them. Her hands froze again. The silence grew heavier, pressing against her. It was the kind of silence that asks questions without words, the kind that makes people uncomfortable. Somewhere in the audience, a thought passed without a sound. Is she ready? She swallowed. Her fingers curled. This time, she didn't pull away. She pressed the key. The first note was about to be born. And in that moment, right before sound filled the air, no one knew what would happen next. Not them. Not even her. The first note hung in the air, clear and perfect. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the silence like a beam of light. A second note followed, then a third, and suddenly, her fingers weren't shaken anymore. They were flying. The music poured out of her, a story she had held inside for so long. It was full of her fear, her doubt, but also a deep, powerful joy. The audience, who had been expecting nothing, leaned forward. Whisper's DA'd phones were put away. All eyes were on her. The melody swelled, filling every corner of the vast hall. It was a complex piece, one that demanded both power and grace. Her hands, which had seemed so small and unsure just moments ago, now commanded the instrument with absolute authority. The doubt in the room was replaced by awe. The quiet judgment turned into captivated silence. She was no longer the nervous girl in plain clothes. She was the music. She closed her eyes, lost in the world she was creating. The stage, the lights, the audience, they all disappeared. There was only her and the piano. Each note was a word, each chord a sentence in a conversation only they could have. The music spoke of lonely practice rooms, of moments of frustration when she almost gave up, and of the stubborn hope that kept her going. It was a sound that was both heartbreaking and triumphant. As the final notes of the piece began to fade, a profound quiet settled over the hall. It was a different kind of silence this time, not of doubt, but of reverence. She let the last sound linger, holding it for just a moment longer before it vanished completely. For a beat, there was nothing. Then, a single person started to clap. Another joined, and then another, until the polite applause from earlier was washed away by a roar. It was thunderous, genuine, overwhelming. She opened her eyes, startled. The standing ovation was for her. The faces in the crowd were no longer filled with doubt, but with wonder and admiration. A smile finally touched her lips, real and bright. She had done it. She hadn't just played the piano. She had shared a piece of a soul, and they had heard her. As she took her bow, she knew that this was just the beginning. The girl who was afraid to make a sound had just found her voice, and it was unforgettable. Thanks for watching. The note filled the hole. It was soft at first, so soft that some people almost missed it, but it was there. Clear, honest, alive. The sound did not rush. It did not try to impress. It simply existed, floating through the air like a quiet truth that could no longer be hidden. Her fingers stayed on the key for a moment longer than needed. She listened, really listened, as the sound faded. Her heart was still racing, but something inside her shifted. She pressed another key, then another. The notes began to connect, slowly, carefully. Not fast, not loud, just steady, like someone speaking after years of silence. In the audience, movement stopped. Someone lowered their phone without realizing it. Another person leaned forward slightly. A whisper started to form, then died before it could be spoken. The music was not perfect, but it was real. Her shoulders relaxed a little as her hands began to remember what her mind almost forgot. The piano no longer felt like a stranger. It felt like an old friend who had been waiting patiently. Each note carried something with it. Loneliness, hope, fear, strength. She did not think about the audience anymore. She did not think about the lights or the quiet. Her world narrowed to the keys beneath her fingers and the sound they created. Her hands stopped shaking. The melody grew deeper, not louder, but fuller. It wrapped itself around the room, settling into corners that had been empty moments before. It reached people who had come expecting something simple, something forgettable. A person in the front row blinked quickly and looked away. Another crossed their arms tighter, as if holding something in. The music was saying things no words could. She leaned slightly into the piano now, her back straight, her breathing steady. Her fingers moved with more trust, more courage. The notes rose and fell, gentle but firm, like waves that knew exactly where they were going. Time changed shape. Seconds stretched. Minutes disappeared. No one checked the clock. No one shifted in their seat. The room was no longer waiting. It was listening. Her face softened as she played. A small crease between her brows smoothed out. Her lips parted slightly, not in fear now, but in focus. She felt something warm spread through her chest. Belonging. The piano answered her, touch willingly. Each key responded, not resisting, not judging, just giving sound. She remembered why she had loved this in the first place. Not for praise, not for approval, but because, here, she could exist fully. The melody reached a quiet peak, then slowly began to descend, softer again, slower, like a deep breath after a long climb. Someone in the audience wiped their eye quickly and laughed under their breath, embarrassed. Another sat perfectly still, hands folded, eyes fixed on the stage. When the final note came, it did not end sharply. It lingered, then faded. Silence returned to the hall, but it was not the same silence as before. This silence was full. Her hands rested on the keys. She did not move. She did not look up. She needed one more second to understand what had just happened. Then the sound came. Applause. Not polite, not controlled. Real? It started with one pair of hands, then another, then many. The sound rose quickly, filling the space where Dao had lived just moments ago. She lifted her head slowly. Faces looked different now. Eyes were wider, expressions softer, judgment replaced by something else. Respect. She stood, unsure what to do with her hands. The applause continued. Someone stood up, then another. Soon, more followed, not because they were told to, but because they felt moved. Her throat tightened. She bowed slightly, not because she had planned to, but because it felt right. The lights felt warmer now, less harsh, almost kind. As she stepped away from the piano, she glanced back at it once. Just a quick look. A silent thank you. Backstage, the noise of the hall sounded distant. Her ears rang softly. Her body felt light, like she was floating just above the ground. Someone passed her and smiled. A real smile, not polite, not forced. She returned it, surprised by how natural it felt. Later, when the hall emptied and the lights dimmed, she sat alone for a moment. The room looked different without people. Quiet. Peaceful. She thought about the fear she had felt earlier, how heavy it had been, how close she had come to walking away, and how small it felt now. She understood something then. Failure had never been the real danger. Silence was. She stood and walked toward the exit. Her steps were steady, confident. The night air outside felt cool and fresh. She took a deep breath and smiled to herself. They had thought she would fail, but what they really saw was someone who refused to disappear, and that was only the beginning.